Hi guys, Rhea Drysdale here from Outspoken Media. I am here with Whiteboard Plus and really excited to be joining you again. So I'm actually attending the MozCon event right now. Hopefully I had a chance to meet many of you and you were able to get a lot out of it. And if you didn't, if you weren't able to make the event, check out those videos, they're amazing. So I'm here today to talk a little bit about the consultant-vendor relationship. And I know you're going to say, hey, didn't you just do that? And I did. But we had an interesting situation that came about as a result of that video. We actually landed a client who was a fantastic client. I really believed in his product, still do, think he's a great guy, the organization's fantastic. And he saw the Whiteboard Friday and said, man, I really want to work with you. We said, great, everything was like love and puppies. And we decided to get started with him. Within a couple of weeks, we quickly realized that the relationship was not going the direction that we wanted it to, and it was kind of an epic fail moment. The thing about fails is they can teach you a lot, and you should never have a mistake in which things kind of unravel and you just go, oh man, that sucked, now what? You should always stop and reevaluate the situation and say what went wrong and how do we fix it. And what we found is that because we were trying so hard to have that consultant relationship, we really didn't do everything that we needed to in the very beginning to establish the level of trust and get all the information and our facts and get all of our expectations in alignment. And so a number of you during my video before said, how do you actually establish that consultant relationship? And since we've had this mistake, which we were very thankful for because it taught us a lot, and hopefully there were no hard feelings on his part, we actually did a full refund and said, you know what, we made mistakes and I'm sorry. And you were one of the first people that we took on as a pure consultant type of relationship. So that taught us a lot. We know what we're doing now, and let's move forward. So I want to share those experiences with you. So the first thing we said is moving forward, all of our clients, if they're coming in with the expectation that we're going to be a consultant, we have to start with a survey. I was talking to someone else that works in-house at a really large company, and when he was evaluating proposals, he told me that something that Vanessa Fox over at 9 by Blue does is has this great questionnaire in which she says, hey, I need to know all these things about your site before I can possibly begin to quote you. And he said while it was very cumbersome, it was also great because he knew that she had all of her facts and was really caring about his business. And I really like that philosophy where if you're going to be a consultant, you have to have all the information. So as a client, be prepared to work before you're going to take on a consultant. Recognize that you have to give them all the information, all the facts, your history. So what are we going to need during the client survey? I think the most important thing is your data. And the client that we worked with did give us his data, and he'd spent a long time accumulating this data and being successful in what he was doing. So we saw that data, but now the question is, what's something new that we can bring to it? And we'll get to that later. But you want to really acknowledge that they've put a lot of time and effort, and on the client side, you've put the client side, you've put a lot of time and effort into building your business. So you're going to have a lot more information than a consultant will. So we need your data. We also need the history of the company. The history of the site, any changes that are getting made, anything that's going to be coming up. We need to know what your resources look like. We need to know the level of knowledge that you have. And this is really key, and it's a hard thing to ask sometimes, which is, you know, within SEO, there are so many different ways of doing SEO. We've got the whole black to white spectrum. So it's a question of what does the client know? And it's very important that you tell your consultant, because the last thing that you want is for the consultant to be telling you something that you already know about, or that you have a certain take on and they have a completely different philosophy behind it. Which also speaks to language that's being used. Sometimes we have expectations of something and we have a certain language or way that we're framing it, and it's really important that we have that language, we understand how your operation and your organization works and can speak to that, and vice versa. So the client survey is really mostly on the client. So this is our little client guy here. So this is all taking place with the client and it's all on them. The second thing that needs to happen is that very early on, before you even start in the engagement, a needs assessment has to take place. And this is, I think, inherently where we failed in working with the client that we were working with. We received all our data, and we felt this need to bring something new to the table. But again, he'd already done all of this work for years and years and years, and it was good data. And what really needed to happen was actually for us to transition more to a vendor and just get the job done, which was link development for him. And in looking at the keyword selection, he did have some really good keywords, but we didn't acknowledge that. Instead, we were trying to like rack our brains and say, oh man, there has to be a million other keywords out there and let's go find them. But he already knew it was working. So with the needs assessment, basically analyze what's been done right. Acknowledge that. People want to know that, that they're heading in the right direction, that all the work that they're doing isn't for naught. So also point out if you see something that's just really wrong and needs to stop. And then in addition to that, start to try to find new opportunities. And you don't have to, in the very beginning, go, hey, here's the world, let's go try and do this. Be very selective in finding those opportunities that are going to be really high value, and they're going to get good results, and they're going to show your level of expertise and build trust. And then from there, you can move on to the other things. But do that needs assessment. And this is going to, again, be mostly on you, but it's going to be informed by the client survey. The third thing that we really have to focus on, which is I think where most relationships just fall completely, are expectations. What are the expectations that you have? And this is going to take place between you and the client, so this is our very loving relationship here. And expectations can center around a number of things. Metrics. There are going to be different expectations of the metrics that the client wants you to achieve, and you're going to have expectations internally for what you want to achieve. I like to have expectations, and I know that Will Reynolds over at SEER has said this before, where they're going to shoot really high internally, and they're going to try to control the client's expectations and say, look, we're going to try to achieve this for you, but then you know that you're actually trying to go even more beyond that. That way you can excel and look amazing. And I think that's really important, is to understand what your limitations are, what you can and can't do, and control that with regard to those metrics. So with expectations, you're also going to be looking at value. What is the value to the client? Sometimes the value is very clear. If you're dealing with links, they just want a certain number of links. I like to look at conversions more so, but sometimes if it's a reputation management problem, they just want to see the search results be cleaned up. But we have another client where his value is actually, his value is actually a perceived value. And what I mean by that is, even though he came to us for search engine marketing, this client really just wants us to answer his emails anytime he sends them. If he calls us, if he emails us, he loves that we're available to him. So for him, that's perceived value that's irreplaceable, because we're available to him at all times. And even if we've had a slow month or something else that's popped up, he doesn't care because we're available. That just kind of hit us recently with him, and we went, wow, you know, we've been working with this guy for 3.5 years, and every month we're going, man, we need to get more links, we need to do this, we need to do that, and we've dominated it, we've killed it, but now how do we move on to that next level? So we're thinking, you know, we have so much more we could be doing, and his response was, I just love that you answer my emails. So that's really good, is just understanding what's the true value. The other expectations, deliverables. So with your client, there are going to be certain deliverables that they're looking for, and they may have an assumption, especially in a consultant relationship, to receive certain documents. And the question is, do you have the same assumptions? Time frame is another really big one. If there are deliverables, what's the time frame in which you're going to get that to them, as well as that value and those metrics that you're trying to achieve, what's the time frame for that? And then lastly, my last little switch here, communication. So communication is key. How frequently do they want to hear from you? And how frequently should you be communicating? Should you be touching base, reporting to them? Who within their organization should you be talking to? What do the approvals look like, which I mentioned in the video last time for Whiteboard Friday. But really establishing that up front. What do you want from us and how often? And I think that if, as consultants, we can really get the client survey in, understand their true needs, and define expectations both as the client and the consultant, those are going to be much happier relationships, and I think that's how you transition to the consultant versus the vendor. But keep that in mind, because I think that there are times when a lot of people do reach out and they want to have a consultant, but inherently they're still kind of thinking in that vendor mindset, so there's going to be a lot of education needed and a lot of communication. And that's it from me. It's not very tactical, but I think that this is really important, and this is inherently where a lot of contracts kind of fall apart, as the one that just happened with us did, which makes me really sad, but at the same time, I learned a lot from it, and our organization is better. We have great process maps as a result, and I got to share it with you. Thank you very much.